Hello, everyone, and welcome to day one of our online learning. There might be some snags in this thing, as there's some video and audio prompts to the recording, but we're still going to continue on with our lesson into contract law, chapter 15. So hopefully you can see everything, and we're going to move right along right now. So here we go. We've got contract law moving into consumer protections. Okay, so our learning targets are listed here for you. The need for government involvement in the marketplace, that's huge. Identify protections against substandard goods, recognizing unfair methods of competition, describing the protections afforded consumers by the law of product liability, and identifying the various warranties that may apply to a sales transaction. Chapter 15 is going to cover 2 days. This will also bring us to the end of our unit, in which time there'll be a final unit assessment due by you guys on Friday. More to follow on that. Okay, so now we have this section of chapter 15 will deal with protections through government action. Okay, so here are some definitions for you. A consumer is just like me or you. It's any individual that acquires goods that are primarily used for personal consumption. Okay, this Latin term here, caveat emptor, is let the buyer beware. Okay, this phrase is in contract law comes about because most of the buyers have less information about a product than the seller does. Let the buyer beware could apply to areas where we are not experts, say like purchasing a car, especially if the car is not from a dealership, but from somebody that we might have found on Craigslist or another non-dealership place. Okay, so this caveat emptor that is means let the buyer beware. Okay, now there have been so many instances where buyers have had protections now through consumer laws that caveat venditor means let the seller beware. The Latin venditor meaning vendor, which is a seller. So those are two terms that you'll need to know: caveat emptor and caveat venditor. Okay. Normally, when there's issues involving either one person or lots of people, you can bring what's called a class action lawsuit. As the definition states, it allows one or more individuals to sue, not only on behalf of themselves, but on behalf of many others who were similarly wronged. The movie Aaron Brockovich, if you've ever seen that movie, that was all about a class action lawsuit. Some of the examples in modern society have been tobacco companies, where folks have actually sued the tobacco companies for selling products that got them sick. There was one interesting one that I found: Kona Beer. Kona Beer suffered a class action lawsuit against itself because they were claiming that their product was manufactured strictly in Hawaii, and that was not true. And then finally, back in 2008, there was a BP spill in Mexico. Perhaps you know the underwater rig Horizon. They spent a bunch of days trying to cap that, as it was just pumping gallons and gallons and gallons of fuel into the Gulf of Mexico. So the class action lawsuit was filed on behalf of, believe it or not, of the environment. It had caused so much damage to the environment that a class action lawsuit was brought. Another interesting one you may not know about because you guys don't participate in these, but your parents might, is that if a company, say like Visa or Wells Fargo, participates in illegal actions, then they might get letters in the mail asking them to be part of the class action lawsuit, even though the monetary awards they might get is shared among all the participants. So let's just say, for example, the class action lawsuit is suing for $1 million. Well, if you get 500,000 people involved in the lawsuit, then each person gets $2. Okay, so be careful how many people you want to bring to a class action lawsuit. Ideally, the number is 30, but you want to keep it less than 100. Okay? Governmental procedures, rather than direct involvement from any of the three branches of government, which are the judicial, the legislative, and the executive, these branches have government agencies to do their work for them. and they handle the issues in the public sector, like the Food and Drug Administration. That is obviously one that's in the news today as they look for a vaccine or a cure for COVID-19. Food and Drug Administration are the ones who are carrying out the legalization of any type of drugs that are distributed to the Americans, to us as citizens. The legislative branch would not oversee that particular process of the legalization of drugs. They have the Food and Drug Administration to do that for them. The Federal Trade Commission acts the same way. If you buy stocks in a company and feel that you have been led down a false path and have been swindled somehow, you would file your complaint not with the legislative or executive or judicial branch. You would not go straight to the Supreme Court. You would rather take it up with the Federal Trade Commission, and they would be able to rule on your behalf or not. Normally, when this happens, an investigation will begin, and if there is probable cause that the plaintiff, you, has a reasonable case against the defendant, then that government agency will issue a cease and desist order. This tells that company to immediately stop whatever practice is going on that led to you or any other party being injured. Before a cease and desist order is issued, companies can self-inflict a consent order. This is a voluntary agreement to stop any illegal or questionable practices. While it is voluntary, it is certainly court enforced. So if a company, let's just say the tobacco industry, says, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe we made a product that's killing people," they would issue themselves a consent order that says, "Hey, we're going to take a look at this." So it's sort of a self-investigative method that looks good to the public when it happens. The only problem is that it is court enforced, so they can't take it away. All of these obviously leading to the injured party or the plaintiff looking for some sort of restitution. That would be a restoration, restoring to them any monies that were lost through the participation of any event that brought them injury, as well as anything that might restore them to a happy life, which might be the pain and suffering that folks are most commonly uh, exposed to. So those are some procedures that they can work with. The government also helps consumers through the enforcement of licensing. There are specific fields of employment that require licensing. Being a teacher, you need to have a license. Being a nurse or being a doctor, you need to have a license. Believe it or not, if you want to be a beautician, excuse me, if you want to be a beautician, you need to have a license. It is clear to me that some in society probably either need to have their license renewed or might be operating uh, without a license at all. Accountants need a license, lawyers need a license. This is another way to ensure that the public is protected from people who would participate in an industry without the proper qualifications. They could be causing injury to people that they're not even aware of, so therefore they have to go through the licensing practice. Okay. There is also protections against unsafe products. As you can see here, the Consumer Protection Safety Act of 1972 created the Consumer Protection Safety Commission. And the commission is just a board of directors or a board of maybe 7 or 9 people, male or female, that require producers of products to inform the public of any defects. If you make a product knowing that it could cause harm, then you need to inform the public. One of these that became real famous in the early 70s and late 80s is lead based paint. There was a huge push in the late 90s and early 2000s to make sure that any homes that were built before a certain year were reported to the government because they were built using lead-based paint. Lead-based paint was found to cause severe damage in children and even young adults, and they were not informed of the possible injuries and the risks that were involved of inhaling lead-based paint. So that was a huge issue that the commission had to take up, as it was very prevalent in the 50s and 60s in home building. This law also requires producers and retailers to comply with safety laws. So you can't, let's say that you, Bob the Builder toys cannot have a real saw. Play hammers cannot come with real nails. There has to be safety laws that are adhered to, and if they are not, it is the commission that would take them up and deal with the retailers and producers of these products in due course. Okay. They also protect against unfair methods of competition. You know me, I love competition. Competition creates controversy, and controversy creates cash. However, there are some limitations to competition. Any method of doing business that is in bad faith or causes fraud or creates a monopoly. Believe it or not, that great board game that you all may be familiar with, not exactly legal anymore. You have to be able to have some form of competition. You cannot freeze out people from the marketplace. That is illegal. So here are some examples of unfair methods of competition. When you price fix, pardon me, price fixing is when, let's say, Darius and Callie are they own phone companies. One owns AT&T South, and the other owns I don't know. Let's make something up. AT&T West. They agree that they will not sell any products below a certain price, which means that the consumers, even though a reasonable price for an item might be $100 and they're charging $1,000, they are price fixing, and that is illegal. You have to be able to sell something that is at a competitive price. Okay, when supply and demand, when prices are high, when demand is high, so like diamonds. So it's okay to charge a high price for diamonds because they're in high demand. But if diamonds were in low demand and nobody wanted them, to charge such a high price would be price gouging. I'll give you a current example of our gas prices. Today in Slinger, gas was $1.79 a gallon. This is close to 80 cents lower than it was 2 weeks ago. Why? Because the demand for gas is low. Why is it low? Because we are not traveling as much as we were before due to the federal government's requests of self quarantine. And quite frankly, with school being closed, we have nowhere to go. People don't go to work. So now the demand for gas is extremely low. If gas prices were to get, as I think I say in my slide here, when Quick Trip and Speedway agree to keep the price of gas high during periods of low demand, that would be price fixing. Okay. And that is illegal. So price fixing, when two companies get together and two or more companies get together and decide that they're going to charge a certain price for something no matter what. False advertising or misleading advertising. We've all seen that, right? They make untrue claims. This is the best product in the world, or, all the models use it, or all the athletes think it's the greatest thing. Well, a little false advertising there. We see a lot of false advertising in big sale events like Black Friday, where they advertise that a TV, this is back when TVs were really expensive and they wanted to sell them for cheap, that you can get a 75-inch TV for $100. Well, it's great. We all run down to Target and we all try to get the 75-inch TV for $100. Yeah, but they only had four, and the line is 500 people out the door. Well, not only is that false advertising, but that's also an example of what I list here called bait and switch. They bait you in, they sort of, get the hook together and they cast that hook and they go, oh, oh, we got you, but we're not going to give you that TV. We're going to give you a 50-inch TV for $300 or something else. Bait and switch is when they falsely advertise a product to get you into the door, try to sell you something else. Okay. Towards the end here, we're looking at the other way governments control consumers. They protect us against illegal lotteries and confidence games. Excuse me. I don't know what's wrong with me today. Remember from chapter 10, a legal lottery has to have three things, right? It has to have consideration, okay, a payment or a wager. It has to have chance, okay, and there has to be a prize. Okay, these are all elements of a legal lottery that most states and charitable organizations adopt. Okay, but there are some examples of an illegal lottery, and the most famous of these is a Ponzi scheme, not a Fonzie scheme. It is a Ponzi scheme, and I have attached a link here for you to view as to exactly what a Ponzi scheme is. Please make sure that you take a look at this link, as there will be a requirement of a question this week about that you would have to respond to. The video is short; it's less than 5 minutes, so please take some time to view that. Okay. Unfair pricing. This is great. Uh, Unfair pricing in services. When you misrepresent that goods are being sold at a considerable discount to get something else. So, you buy, great example, furniture stores offer a free TV with purchase. Well, they jack the price of the couch up or the chair up, which is normally $300. They jack it up to $700 in order to cover the cost of the television.